It is a pleasure to be here. And I'm looking out in the audience and I'm thinking, you know, even with that introduction, there are some of you that are saying, now just exactly why did I come down here to hear a landscape photographer tonight? Look, the only reason I'm here is to share with you the very best that I've learned in my life. Don't take notes, because I think that you know in your hearts most of what I'm going to say anyway. What I'd like you to do is to join me in creating an extraordinary vision, a vision that I think we all know is true if we just have the courage to manifest it. Extraordinary visions. As a photographer with National Geographic, I created a lot of them. How did we do it? I can sum it up in 4 words: vision, passion, purpose, and creativity. And I'd like to talk to you about all 4 of those this evening and how they all go together to make things that are truly extraordinary. I want to show you some of my own images, but, you know, the real visions that I'm interested in exploring tonight are not photographic. They're the visions we have for our lives and how truly extraordinary they can be. When I was a young man, my dad told me a story. Not a new story then, not a new story now. Probably some of you have heard it, but it was one of those stories that really focused my life. It was a story about 2 men laboring in a courtyard in medieval Italy. And they sat in the heat of the noonday sun, drenched in sweat, chiseling at blocks of marble. One man's face was downcast, shoulders bent, muscles straining, and a priest crossing the courtyard stopped beside him, looked down and said, "What are you doing, my son?" And without looking up, the man answered, "I am chipping stone." And the priest turned to the other man, and his shoulders too were bent, his muscles strained, but his face was a smile, and his eyes filled with the joyful effort of passion. "What are you doing?" he said. "I am building a cathedral. I am building a cathedral." Whoa. You know, that story really got to me. I kept thinking these 2 guys are looking at exactly the same thing, and one of them is a stone chipper, and the other is a cathedral builder, and the only difference was vision. Vision. Man, I knew which one I wanted to be. No idea how. I mean, I was a young man. I still held that maxim, I won't believe it until I see it. That's how we all start out. We all start out needing those teachers, those mentors, those seminal experiences in our lives that show us what's possible. This was one of those teachers for me, the National Geographic. We took it in our house from long before I was born, you know, and it'd come in and I'd get it, I'd drag it upstairs, I'd read it. My father would finally say, "Turn off the light, go to bed." I'd turn it back on, I'd get a flashlight, I'd hide under the covers, I'd do whatever it took to stay up into the night and look into these pages, at the pictures that showed me the possibilities the world had to offer. I'm not the only geographic freak out there, you know. I know that. I had a gentleman come out of the audience recently. He came up to me and said, "I love the Geographic. I read the Geographic because it takes me to places I will never go." "It's the same reason I read Playboy," he said. I never thought I'd work for them. I never thought I'd shoot for them. You know, they began influencing my life long before I even knew I was a photographer, because they had a wonderful vision of the world. The vision of the Geographic, what they charged me with every time they sent me out, was to celebrate what was right with the world, rather than wallowing in what was wrong with it. To celebrate what's right with the world. That's why we keep those silly yellow magazines. You can't throw one away. It's a national sacrilege to throw away a Geographic. You know? If all the Geographics in the Midwest disappeared at one time, half the houses would fall in on themselves, you know, because they're supported by big yellow columns in the basement. You know, you got them. I know you do. You know, and we say we're keeping them for little Susie's school project. I don't think so. I think when times are tough, we sneak downstairs in our pajamas at midnight and just hold on to those yellow columns, because they celebrate what's right with the world. So I'd look at those pictures with that attitude, and I'd fall in love. I'd fall in love with the world. And I'd feel what you always feel when you fall in love. I'd feel passion, that energy that rises up from within. Great visions do that. They release passion. I'd look at those pictures with that passion, and in that moment, I'd transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Now that's the moment of creativity. That's really all creativity is. Just that moment where we look at the ordinary, but what we see is extraordinary, and we do that when we fall in love. When we fall in love with ourselves, with our spouse, with our family, with our community, with the world. At that moment, we stop being stone chippers and start to become cathedral builders and begin to build an extraordinary vision for our lives.